Hello and welcome to our first segment of In the Seat with the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, President Dr. Irfan Ali. My name is Fariza Hanif, Sunday editor at the Guyana Chronicle newspaper. This is the first time that the President will be interviewed by 5 women journalists in Guyana. Joining me on this panel is Kiana Wilberg, the senior editor at the Guyana Standard. We have Marcel Fowler from the Starbrick News. She's a senior journalist there. We have Vishani Raghaber, senior editor at the Newsroom. And we have Marcia Ho, information liaison officer at the Office of the Prime Minister. Today's segment will focus specifically on the developments in Guyana, and the President will delve into some of the initiatives that he has planned now and beyond 2025. I will pass this on to Kiana Wilberg, who will ask the President her first question.
Thank you, Fariza. Mr. President, before we delve into the development initiatives and projects that your government has led, I want to touch a bit on leadership. Being the President of Guyana is not something that comes with a manual. I imagine that it is a role that one must discover who he wants to be and determine what type of leadership style you'd like to implement. So my question on this premise is threefold. What has surprised you the most being President of Guyana? What has tested you the most? And how do you intend to set yourself apart from those leaders who have held that very seat?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and it's amazing to be in this interview by 5 distinguished women. I want to use the word powerful. I'll stick with distinguished at this point. Now, that is a question that can take us all day. But I want to start by saying, in my humble opinion, theoretical style of leadership, or textbook style of leadership, what you're taught in management school, is just a basis on developing different skill sets. If you're trying to apply a textbook style of leadership or a theory-based style of leadership in any environment, then you will be going with a bias or an approach that may not suit the environment. So leadership and approach to leadership must be applicable to the environment and situations that confront you. An effective leader, in my opinion, is one who can adapt to different challenges and situations. There is no one-size-fits-all or one strategy that fits all. In leadership, you have to adapt to different situations. As President of Guyana, there are many situations that will confront me or confront any leader. And it's your ability to adapt, to understand the issue. And to understand the issue requires you being in a position to understand. To be in that position to understand, you have to know what is happening. You have to be tuned in and plugged into the development. You can't be an aloof leader. We have had situations in this country where the leadership in the last APNU-AFC government, for example, was so aloof. You have leaders of political parties now that are so aloof, right? Some of them pride themselves as master of the law, but they're aloof from the reality. They're not connected to the reality. And if you're not connected to the reality or connected to the country and what are the challenges, the opportunities, the threat, then you will not be able to carve an understanding that will allow you as a leader to adapt in a situation that requires a specific approach. So first of all, I don't think any leader should box themselves into a one-size-fits-all approach. That is a recipe for failure. However, what should define leadership is what you're after. And I would say that I'm after results. I'm impatient about results because I'm results-driven. I don't believe in a hierarchy. I believe that circular form of leadership, that's my own positioning of what leadership is, because if it's circular, it is on a broken connection that speaks about different players, team, integration, achieving everything within the scope of that circle. And of course, outside of that circle, you will have what you call push factors, factors that are external to the circle, that would influence or that can affect results. But it is the ability of that circle to work in a collective way and keep connected that will allow the results to be achieved. So I would say that it is what you want out of leadership. You can be a president of Guyana, and when you go somewhere, and when I came into office, the security posture was to have 5 blocks clear if the president is going somewhere, or to have to be distance away from the very people who you have to serve. Now there is risk, and I understand that there is a security posture, but you're also elected to serve. And for me, if I'm not connected to the people, I don't feel, or the people don't feel that they can connect with me or they can reach me, then it is not effective. So you have leaders who believe that they can be ceremonial. This is an executive presidency. You either succeed or you fail. And the only way you can succeed is if you hold yourself to results that you must achieve. So take, for example, some people say you're simplifying the presidency in the sense that you're not keeping this aloofness to the presidency. So they believe that I'm too accessible. You have many people who will say, Mr. President, you're too accessible. Mr. President, or the president should keep a big buffer between the people. Because they look at the ceremonial aspect. That is what defines them. The pomp and ceremony. That is not what defines me. What defines me is getting down there and get the work done and being involved in the process of achieving the results. And that is what is key. So, for example, the government I lead now, we are implementing tens of thousands of projects at the regional level, the community level, and the national level, with the same level of bureaucracy. And you have maybe 5% of projects that are behind schedule. But you can't take your eyes off of that 5%. That 5% is also critical for the success of the government, for the success of community. Because a small road that may seem insignificant is very important for a family where a contractor is doing the road and maybe held up for 4 additional months. So we have to ensure that everything works, even that 5%. So I have a cabinet that has been implementing a project portfolio that is 10 times what the combined bureaucracy under the AP and the AFC would have implemented. And you have just 5% that may be behind schedule. So the collective cabinet of the AP and UFC cannot produce 10% of one minister could produce in my government. And I say this without, in a humble way, but without fear of contradiction. The collective cabinet of the AP and look, what can they point to? We had a minister of urban agriculture. We can't make up things as we go along. You have to have a clear vision. So leadership is about creating a clear vision and holding people accountable. You have to be courageous as a leader. And it's called public service for something. It's called public service because you're accountable to the public. And courageousness of a leader is not being a populist. It's working hard every day, opening up yourself for criticism. And I've always, any journalist can tell you, anybody can tell you, you can be as critical as you want. But what must define any leadership is the success, the results at the end of the day. And that is what we are after. Now, what has tested me the most? I detest racism. Fundamentally, I detest racism. And I detest anyone that propagates racism. Racism has no place in my life, in my ideas. Right? For a matter of fact, in my spiritual upbringing, I cannot be a part of what I am if I harbor any figment of a thought about racism. So those who, those who propagate racism and use racism as a tool to mobilize or as a tool to generate public sentiments, they're short-lived. They're short-sighted because this country is changing at such a rapid pace that the next generation, and what we're doing, look at what we're doing. Every single thing that we do as a government is across the board, whether it's increase for salaries, the $100,000, the individual grant, the support of vulnerable group, people living with disability, the Because We Care grant, it's all across the board. Now, I agree, that there are communities that present specific economic challenges that must be addressed, just like we address bauxite, just like we address sugar. Now what we have to do is have the differentiated approach to development. And that differentiated approach to development is not based on ethnicity, but is based on economic realities of geographic positions. So for example, what are the opportunities out of Region 10, given that we'll have the connection to Brazil, given that bauxite, we've been able to revive the bauxite industry. How do we connect that with the whole national development arc that will grow all the regions and bring prosperity to all the regions? So I would say that it's not being tested, but it's being, racism is something that I detest. Also, you will be aware that we have brilliant public servants, some serve 50 years, 25 years, we have, but we also have inefficiency. And I'll be the first to tell you that wherever there is inefficiency in the system, we have to correct those inefficiencies. But in correcting the inefficiency, because of the pace at which the economy is going, you can't stop. You can't stop, correct, and restart. For us, we have to understand in this country, because of the scale of development, it's like learning on the job for many of those in public service. And we have to accept some of that. We have to accept some of that in this phase of development. Because of the speed of development, because of the scope and the size of development, you will have some of that. But in doing so, we have to ensure that efficiency is built into the systems themselves. And that is why we're moving to more innovative tools, technological tools, digitization, building up our capacity with the help of technology to enable efficiency, enable high standards of monitoring and all of this. Important to that is the involvement of the community in the whole development arc. And your third question was
The third aspect of that question was, during your presidency, particularly in your first term, what has surprised you?
Yes, and how do I seek to differentiate
Yes.
myself? I don't seek to differentiate myself. The only thing I'm after is success for the country. The only thing I'm after is results. And so I'm not in any race to differentiate myself. The only thing I am interested in is fulfilling my constitutional mandate, and that is something you can trust this government with. You know, we have seen under the AP and UFC government that they cannot be trusted. Nigel Hughes was part of that government, Norton was part of that government, and they have demonstrated that they don't have the ability to be trusted in sticking to the constitution of our country. And no confidence motion was passed. We had to go to the court to get them to adhere to constitutional provision. Same, we saw them trying to steal election in 2020. And they speak from the high benches of conscience and truth. So, you know, the day, it will be an interesting day when any of these so-called leaders could come up with their SOPs, when they can come and apologize for the fact that mathematically they were ingenious in trying to argue that 32 is more than 33. That they're sorry for the damage, not because to the PPP or the PPP Civic, but the damage they caused to the country in their attempt to derail democracy. So I don't seek to differentiate myself. All I'm seeking to do is achieve results for the country and to be successful, for the country to be successful for all of us.
I know I asked a three-pronged question, and there's just one aspect of it that I'd love to get from you. During your presidency, is there anything that caught you by surprise in the management of the country?
I won't say that there's anything that caught me very surprised, because in the presidency there are many things every single day that you have to deal with that you might not expect. For example, if I may give you some example, and this is at the national, regional, and international level. We did not expect Haiti the situation of Haiti. And even when we got to getting the presidential council and the transition team in place, we did not extend the office of the president and the cabinet, because cabinet members call all hours and I call them all hours. Because we are so plugged in to the population and the accessibility is of such a high level that every situation we are connected to, every problem on the ground we're connected to. You will have seen last Friday, I had to go and engage the vendors in something that should be natural. You build a new facility, the vendors go into the new facility. But that is how it is, and that is what comes with a job in a population set and size like ours, although the economy is growing at such a rapid pace. So as the president, you have to operate at the macro level, dealing with big issues, whether they're international, bilateral issues, and at the same time, you have to be dealing with the micro issue, because that is how the structure of the society is. It's not a 10-tier society. And because of the level of connectivity and accessibility of the government, it is that.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I want to bring you back to a point, if my colleagues will permit me. You spoke about the attempt to rig the elections, and we know that those who have been accused of doing so have been charged, placed before the courts. Now, citizens, some of them rather, are still dealing with the trauma from 2020, and we've seen the delays in the court regarding this case. How do you feel about that, and what would you say to citizens who are a bit impatient to see justice served?
Well, justice itself requires patience. And the judiciary is a separate arm of the state apparatus that I respect. You have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislation. But I believe that there should be some amount of expedience in which we deal with national issues like these, where democracy, the country's credibility, the country's viability was put at risk. Not only political viability, the country's viability. Because one of the important things for investors, and now we're having a lot of FDI and foreign investors, is that political stability. And democracy, the rule of law, and an important part of the rule of law is effective and smooth transition of government. Those are things that investors rank high, and they put the viability of the country at risk. And you know, many of you played an important part in ensuring that the country remain on a stable democratic front. But a lot of people ask me the question, what about those who defended this heist? Those persons, those lawyers who defended this? What should some sort of code of conduct be applied, especially for public office, because many of them run for public office? If they can defend that 32 is greater than 33, and if they can defend attempts to rig an election, and if they can defend by not bringing their SOP, their participation in rigging the election, then it shows that they are defending something they're capable of doing. They're defending something that was beneficial to them. They're defending something that they were part of, and that is what we have to be careful with.
And still on the topic of elections 2020, I know Marcia has a question on that, and I'll let her go ahead and ask her question.
Mr. President, just to follow up, you mentioned that the government will honor those who stood against the attempted rigging in 2020 and played a crucial role in ensuring that the Guyana's democracy is maintained. You said that you will still honor them. Is that still in your plan, to honor those persons that stood up?
And that's on me. I have been lacking in ensuring that this is done at a rapid pace. This is essential. It must be done. We were going to do this last year. We have some delays. We had some delays in the production of the medals, first of all. But let me say that it will be done. It must be done. And this is on me, and I have to ensure that it's done, and done very quickly. And I want it to be done within the first quarter next year. So this is totally on me.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll now take the next question from Marcel Fowler.
Sorry, bring you full circle to a question that is on the mind of most adult Ghanaians, and that is the 100,000 cash grant. In your address to Parliament, you had said that initially that it'll be 200,000 per household, and then that was later changed to 100 for each adult citizen. Now your critics have said that this is an example, that is the change I'm speaking about, of no planning by you and your administration, and it is similar to the same criticisms that you would have leveled against persons yesterday. My question is, how do you respond to that? But most importantly, when will the 100,000 begin being shared, and the methods of payment?
So let me first of all say that governments and any management, let me say this to you, almost every CEO called me recently and said to me that they have similar conversation with their employees. First of all, so let's not hide anything, as this is a closet matter. This is not a closet matter. And let me say this to you. Any good government, any effective leadership does three things. One, you come up with an idea and a vision. You then develop that vision into the implementation plan. And you assess. You assess the vision, you assess the idea, you assess the plan. When I announced in Parliament $200,000 per household, we had a very clear, defined strategy as to how the $200,000 would be disbursed. Very clear, clear path. That is why I could have given you an estimation at the cost. After the announcement of the strategy, like a democratic government, like strong, good leadership, we evaluated the impact of the policy. And that is part of policy framing and policy making. You evaluate the impact of the policy. So in evaluating the impact, for example, some people, journalists, young journalists, approached the Vice President and said to them, many of us are young people, young professionals, who delayed family planning and family, making our own families. Are we going to be penalized for that? So that was a legitimate question. So, like a good cabinet, like what we do, analytical work, listening to people, and that is why we are so good at what we do, because we listen to feedback. So that was one consideration, and many of you know because you were a part of the conversation. Then there were households that were already trying to establish themselves. So the feedback mechanism right away was that, listen, for us to be part of this thing, we have to create a household. We have to create the conditions under which we'll be considered a household. So that feedback came to the system too. So to avoid all of that, like a good team, the cabinet, we decided that a more effective approach would then be to give $100,000 to every person. And it takes courageous leadership. It takes sensible leadership. It takes responsible leadership. It takes dignified leadership, not people who try to steal election. It takes dignified leadership to then say to the public, we have heard you, we know this is going on, because you have to be plugged in. You see, if the last government was plugged in, they would have never bought Rottenwood to Will Stadium out there. So, because we were so plugged in to the reality and to what people say and how our policies impact people, we were able to aggressively respond with a policy that brought greater satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, the policy is to bring higher level of satisfaction. And now, before that policy, not by accident, we had already started to work on a mechanism to deliver this, because as far as possible, we want this to be done by check. So you have to get a system in place to cut the check, to collect the data. You already have natural data set. For example, all public servants, all public sector employees. Then you have all old age pensioners. That is easy data set. Tomorrow morning you can cut the check for all of that because the system is right there. So the training would have been ongoing with the persons who will go now and work with the region in the fields to collect the data. So for example, this weekend, they'll be in Region 9 to get all the information with the ID cards. And then when that comes in, it goes into the system and everything is done on an app electronically. So they have their tablets that will go out in the field. In 2 days, register them, bring them in, and then all the checks will be cut on the system and go back out to the persons. So you build in accountability, transparency, involvement at the regional level, national level, and you effectively and efficiently build a system. Now importantly, this is a system that we'll have now, so that when we're dealing with vulnerable group in the future, for example, before the end of the year, I'll be meeting with children living with disability or people living with disability, because as you know, annually I would meet and to see how we can find further support for them. So I would say to you, we are starting this weekend, Region 9, for example. The app will be up and running. And of course, before the end of the month, the easy data sets like public sector employees, the pensioners, all of that will be easily paid off.
Can I follow up?
Thank you, Mr. President. Marcia has a follow-up question.
Mr. President, there is a concern that the 100,000 payout might replace our customary increases for public servants that is generally announced in December. Can you please provide us with some information and clarity on this?
So you see, Marcia, there's ways in which misinformation and AI work. And the design of that message that is out there is to create negativity around something that will happen. I've already said that before the end of the year, the public servants' annual salary increase will be paid out, retroactive, like normal. The joint services, we introduce their bonus. We don't take away benefit, we give benefit. That would be paid out. So the public servants' increases are definitely going to come before the end of the year, and long before the end of the year.
Thank you.
And that is separate and apart from the 100,000 cash grant.
Just have a follow-up on the same. I wasn't too clear on the payout. You're saying by the end of, as in November, the data sets who are there, like the pensioners. And
Before the end of the month, the existing data set, their check will be cut easily because their data set is already there. This weekend, they will be in Region 9, collecting the data set from Region 9, working with all the 2 shows, the community councils, then they will go. So the hinterland regions will try to complete as quickly as possible because the coast we can easily work with.
So it's safe to say that most persons would get their money before Christmas?
Yes, you will get your money before Christmas, Marcel.
Shani Raghavir.
Mr. President, I just wanted to come in and talk a bit more about the suite of measures you announced in your parliamentary address, cash grants being one. Is this part of a macro poverty alleviation strategy, and can you perhaps talk us through that?
Well, you know, I'm happy you asked that question because, and this is where the media comes in. Financial literacy is something that we are working to alongside these initiatives. And you know, I'm big on creating opportunities, especially for single women. So these 500 homes that we're building on the highway will carry with it the shade houses where they can grow hot pepper. We've already organized the market so that they will be able from those shade houses to pay back their small loan for their low-income homes. Now, and in financial literacy, there's an important concept that is called building up community wealth. So let us take, for example, let's say St. Cuthbert. Let us say you have every 10 person there would be having $1 million. Let us say you have 100 person, that's $10 million. So if you have a community like that, that is close knitted, that economy is integrated in a huge way, and you take that $10 million and you convert it into an economic venture. Let us say you go into 2 trucks or a truck, to do trucking service, or you go into the production of chicken for consumption within as a major farm, and you're able to translate that wealth over time. You'll be doubling that $10 million. You'll be creating sustainable wealth, and you'll be creating, and that is what we're doing now. So right now we're working, for example, tomorrow I'm meeting with Mr. Gaskin, and he is working, he'll be working with me on, we wanted the former minister, and we wanted to build out the gold industry. So how can we build a digital market, an e-market, for what we are known for centuries in this country, good gold, and have all the goldsmiths approach this industry by adopting standards, minimum standards. So adopting the minimum standards, we now give them a platform through which they can access the global market. So that is the project. So how do we build out this whole market, build out the, so those are the type of initiatives that we are working on, right? Building out those markets, bringing new opportunity in. So financial literacy is so important. If you take, for example, all the women or all the young people in the journalism field, let us say you have 100 by $100,000, and simple, and you decide that you create a network for delivery of food, or to create a logistic hub where people can call and you do all the buying and delivery. You're creating a business. You're creating an enterprise that is sustainable. So with these grants that will address vulnerability in the society, we want to match that. Not we want to, we are matching that with financial literacy. And at the highest level, that's from my seat, from this seat, I have to be able to talk about these things, and talk about these things in an open way, where you're allowing persons to understand how you leverage money, how you can leverage as a collective this money and create additional wealth. So I would say that it is addressing the vulnerability within society, whether by direct transfer, by grants, by specific initiative, is part of addressing poverty and bridging and bringing about prosperity and equality. That must be part of the system, where you must identify that there are vulnerability in the society that must be addressed from time to time. If you look, for example, at the taxes we remove on importation of fuel, and you do an assessment of the totality of savings, tens of billions of dollars that would have been extracted from disposable income that we save the population as a result of the removal of those taxes. So the poverty strategy has many legs. At the end of the day, it is how we reduce the cost of doing business, how we put more disposable income in your pockets, how we leverage money, because that is important. So in the future, I see the investment in innovative enterprises as part of an important plan through which we'll build SMEs. So for example, we are moving now from the production, maybe 2,000–3,000% increase in the production of cassava as a result of the increase in yield and also higher performance in the field. So what we have been doing now is talking to major buyers to see how we can now take that cassava, extend the life of the cassava by peeling, chipping, and blast freezing, which has a higher value market. So that is going on now. You also have the situation where Casric, for example, is a major product, is a niche product in the UK market. We are talking to players within that area. So these are the things that will help us to build SMEs. How do we develop a honey brand now that we have hundreds of, more than 1,000 persons involved in the honey industry? How are we going to build this brand to create a Guyana honey brand? Now, all of these things that we are building can go on a niche market. And that is why the digital strategy that we're talking about must be proactive. So we have to build a digital marketplace, an e-marketplace for Guyana that is connected to many other major brands and connected to other niche brands that would allow our producers, small as they are, to bring niche products onto the market and extract high value. To get that done also now requires a payment system that is convenient, accessible, one that has the wherewithal. So for example, when Prime Minister Modi comes, India and the Afri-Exim Bank, both of them are proposing to the region a payment system, national payment system and regional payment system. And this is something we have to fix as a region. The payment system must be fixed if we're going to support SMEs and build efficiency in the business environment.
Mr. President, I just wanted to squeeze in one more question while I have your attention. You mentioned yesterday you had a meeting with Gaisuko. I think it's well ventilated, some of the concerns raised about Gaisuko. Can you perhaps tell us about that meeting and perhaps what both on the management and the government side is being done?
So our next edition, hopefully, we can address Gaisuko holistically, because I want to have a management. But one must remember what we inherited. When we came in the office, within the first week I went to one of the plantations. When I looked in the fields, I said to Minister Zulfi, this is going to take tremendous effort. Because the fields were left abandoned. So even in the canals, big trees were in all the canals. All the ponds were rotten. There was no dam. It was like a forest. So we had to build back from the field. Then we had to build back all the factories. Remember, the factories were left. So now is the process of rebuilding. Now they're at, this year they're about 40,000 tons, just over 40,000 tons. And they expect to grind until late December, because the cane is in the field. Remember, we went on a mechanization project and we were able to plant a greater acreage of cane. The first crop next year would have enough cane coming into the system. Then what they had was a number of parts for the factories. So you have a lot of factory downtime now. And when we go in depth, I will give you the full analysis. You have a lot of factory downtime because there was no maintenance of the factory, there was no spare replacement, they did not keep spares. So we have to now go back, get spares to come in for existing operation, and then bring in additional spares to keep the operation going. So that logistics of bringing in the spares, getting the factories going, that has created a lot of problems. Outside of that, we have to bring in technical capability to support what is there. And we have a team from India, for example, working now. We have a team from Cuba that is working on the field and in the factory. Not doing studies, working to help us to build back the system, improve the system, bring efficiency to the system at the field and the factory. So they are working on that. So we have to have an infusion of those who have done this successfully with our local team, so that we can have that knowledge transfer, and we have to develop a new culture in the industry. We have to also develop a new culture and create a winning culture. So that is also important, and that is why this period of rebuilding would have challenges, but we have to embrace it if we're going to make the industry successful.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I may bring you back to Prime Minister Modi's visit next week, it will be a historic one for Guyana. Can you expound a little bit more on how it is expected to deepen our bilateral relations? And can you talk a little bit more about some of the agreements that we're expected to sign?
Well, I won't get into details with the agreement, but what I would say is that India all the major economies in the world are looking at India, China, and looking at the possibilities. India has a very young population that will be part of the future economy. They have mastered the art of building SMEs. They have mastered the art of creating technological advances that position them well globally. And they also have mastered the art of converting raw food into value-added agro-processing. And these are all things that we are pursuing. So we are discussing with them, of course, the military cooperation. You know, they've extended a credit to us of $100 million, low interest, less than 2% or 2%, somewhere around that. We acquired 2 Donair from them. There are other military assets that we'll acquire from them. There is the most intense training programs in our history are going on now with the Guyana Police Force and with the military exchanges. So we have a strong military cooperation going on, so that will be definitely something we'll be looking to talk about and expanding. Support in agriculture, agro-processing, transfer of technology there. SMEs, building out SMEs and to see how they can help us to develop SMEs here. Manufacturing and industrial development, energy, climate and environment. Those are things that are going to be on the table for discussion, ways in which we can collaborate. Also, we have to look at the building out of the healthcare sector because they are big into health tourism. We're trying to enter that market to see how we can build our healthcare system to be a revenue earner for us. So these are some of the things that will be on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kiana.
Thank you, Fariza. Mr. President, I'd like to take you back to the question of leadership. How would you describe the way you've led this country? And how would you say that filters down to the way you treat with criticisms of your leadership, as well as challenges to your authority?
Well, I don't think they can be challenged to the authority because the authority of the president is not determined by himself. The authority is enshrined in the Constitution. So I don't go after authority or power. What I go after is what is entrusted in me based on the Constitution. So let's get this one right. The power and authority of the presidency comes from the Constitution. It's enshrined in the Constitution. And that is where I work, from what the Constitution requires of me. That's the first thing. The second thing is, look, I welcome criticism. It doesn't bother me. I have a thick skin. It flows off like nothing. It doesn't bother me at all. Because if you can't accept criticism, you're sitting in the wrong seat. I have had journalists, very seasoned, experienced journalists, coming up to me and saying to me, Mr. President, I'm sorry for something I said in the past without any justification. And it doesn't bother me. I've embraced persons who are highly critical of me because the only thing I'm interested in is this country. The only thing I'm interested in is results. None of us have a long time in the space that is called Earth. What will define us is how we utilize the time we have here. How we utilize the time, and I'm fortunate to be given part of that time in service to my country at the highest level. And I intend to make this short time, 10 years maximum, in service to the Guyanese people come. And to make it come requires me to give more of myself, to be selfless in this endeavor. So when people ask me if you don't sleep, I don't. Because this country and what is required of me from this country requires me to be on it all the time. And as long as I have that strength, and if I don't have the strength at any time, I will not burden the country with my inabilities. So I would say that constitutionally I have a mandate that I'm executing, I don't mind criticism. It doesn't bother me. All my life I've gone through that. Trace my political career. Right? Yeah, and you know you had a front page with me one year this morning. I went through all the tender process 3 times. Was the highest tenderer for a property 3 times. And so I've had that, Marcel can tell you. But I've never bothered about it because at the end of the day, your result is what matters. What you're able to do matters. And people see through this. People know who do hard work and who don't do hard work. So I don't have to handle criticism because I accept it as part of life. So I don't have to exert energy on criticism. You see, if you start allowing criticism to bother you, you'll exert energy. You'll be stressed out. You'll worry about what people say about you. And that takes away from positive mindset. That takes away from defining a path to success. That takes away from building a mindset to succeed. Because what you'll be doing every day is thinking about what people will say. How can you make decisions if you worry about criticism, people being critical of it? Every decision you can find something to criticize. If you get married to the best person in the world, you'll find 10 reasons to criticize. If you wear something that you think is the most beautiful outfit today, you have people out there who will be critical. If you throw off weight, they'll be critical. If you put on weight, they'll be critical. But don't allow it to bother you. Focus on what matters. What matters is results. What matters is getting the work done. And in this world we live in, you know, we sit down here and develop 2,000 memes in 1 second. That is the world that your children will grow up in. This is the new paradigm. And if you allow these things to bother you, if you allow these things to shape the way you think and the way you behave and the way you react, then you will let other people define you. You will lose your ability to be analytical. You will lose your ability to make conscious decisions because unconsciously you are making a decision based on how people will think or perceive. And that is how I approach this.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Can I move forward?
Sir, following up on Guy Suku, I know you said that you'll take us to do with in-depth at Guy Suku, and I also have a substantive question.
No.
My follow-up to Guy Suku is the cost of production at US $1.31 per pound when we're selling back at 35. Is that, how long will that be sustainable? And what would you say to critics that are saying this makes no sense? The PPP is just pouring money into an industry that's their stronghold.
Yeah.
That's for Guy Suku. My substantive
So let me answer that one. I'll give you the talk because I don't want to lose my thread. So let's look at that question, the Guy Suku question. You see, if you look at it from a straight line, first of all, let me answer by saying we cannot continue that way of production. That the objective is to work on reducing the cost of production. We have to. But there's a high cost of production now because of the capital that was required to bring back the industry to where it is today. So that is the first. The cost of production has to do with recurrent and capital expenditure, right? We have to fix that. So we have to invest in improving efficiency, creating high yield, and also reducing the cost of production. So I agree with you, and that is work in progress. But also, we cannot look at sugar only from a financial, from that number, the measurement you use. Because there is tremendous other impact for sugar that is non-booked financial, but more economic. So there's something called financial viability and economic viability. When you look at what sugar meant, take Wales for example. When the factory was closed down in Wales, those who live over there know, Wales went dead overnight. A market that had hundreds of vendors closed immediately. The shops closed. So the spin-off effect, there was a dispensary, the sports facility. All the sports facilities you see in those communities, all lost because Gaisuku maintained them. The drainage irrigation system, the supported farmers, Gaisuku maintained that. So the spin-off effect, so there's a measurement, the economic measurement must be taken into consideration. So when you invest in sugar, it's not only for the sugar workers, it is for the economy that sugar supports. Same with bauxite. You can make the same arguments for bauxite. But we have to understand what bauxite supports, the economy it supports. And do you know that in a developed economies, Marcel, agriculture cannot survive without a major subsidy they push into it. Massive subsidy is given to farmers, sometimes to dump the produce. And as the country grows, we have to realize that we have to make these things viable. We have to invest in improving our competitiveness. And naturally, that cost will come down when the cost of energy comes down also. Because as the cost of energy comes down by 50%, production costs will also come down. So whilst I agree with you, it is unacceptably high now, we are working on bringing it down, and there are some bright spots ahead of us that will naturally allow us to bring that down. So there are substantive questions.
I've been speaking, it's to do with that fiery meeting yesterday again. You've been speaking how much you're plugged in to what is happening and all of that. At that meeting you seem to have plugged out, and you were very critical of the delays in a lot of the major projects that we've had here. But nothing was mentioned of one of the biggest project, that's the Wales gas to shore,
Okay. So,
and the delays there. And has anyone been made accountable for that? And before you were saying about the 50% energy reduction, I'm just tying that in because I want to know, will the 50% reduction occur at the start of the startup of the the project, the gas to energy project? When will this 50% be shown on the bill?
great. So let me answer this question. Now, I won't say it's a fiery meeting. It wasn't a fiery meeting. That was a very sober meeting. As I said, we have tens of thousands of projects. 5% of them may be behind schedule. That is what was represented. But we are a conscious government because every day we encounter people. And it requires us bringing the contractors who are behind. But you can't have contractors and consultants coming to a meeting with the president because it demonstrates what you do on the ground too. Or a 5:30 meeting and you're late. Or technical people. That we start on a bad note. We start on a bad foot. And as I said, when you look at what my ministers are doing, when you look at their portfolio and what they're delivering, the entire cabinet of the AP and USC can deliver 10% of any one of what my ministers are doing. And I can go through every sector under the AP and USC government. Look at what they did. Look at the housing sector. I left a clear vision for housing. Clear path for success. What did they deliver? What new scheme was built? Compare that to what the ministers and the team of housing are delivering now. But despite that, their high level of efficiency and delivery does not disallow them from looking at the 5%. Because every project is important coming to the gas to shore. We all know that the gas to shore is a major project that has many moving parts. There are some issues that are at arbitration because of our implementation. We have a consultant, independent consultant, that works on the gas to shore project. There is a transmission line that is, so as I said, it's many parts. You have to get the transmission line completed. You have to get the pipeline to be completed coming onshore. You have to get the plant completed, get the turbines in. And I don't want to explore here all the challenges or the opportunities or what was the missed challenges. Because as I said, many of these issues are at arbitration. And whatever I see can influence or not influence that process. The other thing is, I have made it very clear that long before the end of next year, the cost of electricity will be slashed by half. And we are already working, and that is what the good decision makers do, good leaders do. We are already looking at many different contingencies, many different plans, many different approaches through which we can do two things: improve the efficiency, deliver the power, and also reduce the cost of delivering the power. So there are many things that we're evaluating. We're not static. Whilst we are pursuing this project and we want the power plant to be completed, we understand that you also have to look at contingency efforts. And we are part of a global mix now in which new ideas are brought to us every day. New opportunities are brought to us every day. So one of the important things also, as we're on this, and I'm not going to go into details, because I believe that we also have to find the fastest way to monetize our gas. Because it's the monetization of the gas that will allow us to create the industries and to expand the economy in a massive way, opening up the real opportunities for SMEs.
Thank you, Mr. President. We want to keep you the same trend of the meeting you had yesterday with the contractors, and I know Marcia has some questions, and I'll invite her to ask them.
Yes, Mr. President. Yeah, I know there's some concerns by members of the public about how you handled your meeting yesterday and your approach. Can you share with us why was that approach important, and if we will see more of those meetings happening in the future?
Well, if you look at my style, you have to decide what you want. You want openness, or you want a closed society. I go out to visit project, and I call it as it is. I call what I see. I ask questions, you provide answer, and we deal with the situation. There is no animosity. I'm not in a child's play here. We're dealing with a country. We're dealing with a country. We have to be able to be strong enough to openly discuss issues. But as I said, there is no need, wherever the need arises. This is just 5% of our whole portfolio. You have tens of thousands of projects that are going exceedingly well. But the 5% means something for me. It means something for the country. Just as Marcel said, there are implications. Whether it's big project or small project, they all, it's funny though. Some of the very people, and most people, want to see this level of discourse. But it's funny, that some people would say, you don't hear the president or the government criticizing this one or that one because they're protecting them. Here is an awful forum. All those who are behind were brought to the forum. All the contractors who were behind were brought to the forum. Based on the, and you saw me, because I know what happens. If I see there was a project that I thought was behind, and where there were projects that were ahead and wrongfully brought there, I pointed that out too. And at the end of it, I sought to let the contract, because I understand financial literacy. I understand that many of them need to understand what they're in, and need to understand the importance of what they do. You might think you're building a $30 million road or $20 million road, but you have to understand the importance of that. And that is why I said to them, you have to develop a positive mindset. You have to develop a winning formula. And a winning formula starts with the owners of the company. So we are committed to 100% of success, not 95%. So although we have 95% of the projects highly successful, that 5% means a lot to me.
Can we expect more public discourse and transparency like what you did yesterday?
Well, we are focused on transparency, openness, so you can expect full openness in the way we deal with projects.
Mr. President, still on your meeting yesterday, your position on delayed projects is very clear. I wanted to ask for members of the public, how do you intend on perhaps guarding against contractors now trying to perhaps speed up those projects and might deliver shoddy work? And what happens if that happens?
Well, that's a very good question. But that is why we have the engineering supervisory forms. And we have consultants in some cases, and we have the engineers in some cases. And they have to be vigilant. We have clerk of works on the ground. They have to be vigilant to ensure that quality work is being done. Importantly now, also, you remember when the Vice President went out, he made an announcement that in every community where roads are done, the people of that community are entitled to an on-price copy of the bill of quantity. And you've seen where many communities themselves now are part of the supervision. And they know how important that role is to them. So they're calling in and saying, hey, we get in charge change here. So we have now that community awareness, that people awareness, and accessibility to the documents, where they can have now an on-price copy of the bill. So they can use that bill to help also in ensuring that they get quality work at the end of the day. So it is community involvement, local government involvement, regional government involvement, and the professionalism of the engineers and consultants.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fariza. Mr. President, on the issue of quality, last evening at an event at the UK Ambassador's residence, you spoke about the development of a concept that speaks to qualitative versus quantitative development. And given how you have outlined the kind of leadership that you have implemented in your first term, how can we expect that translating into your top priorities for 2030, assuming that's the will of the people?
So Vision 2030 is very key, and for the planning matrix, and also for young people to aspire to. We are building out, look, we just had an announcement of KLM coming here. We are building out an economy. Every day, next year you will see many new hotels, restaurants open. That will cater for 3 million people easily. So we have to work by 2030 to create an economic model that includes investors, investments, industries, tourism, that would allow 3 million people to pass through the economy, to utilize the services that the economy is creating. Because you have to have consumption. You will have supply of services that will require demand to keep them going. So we are very conscious of that. We are also conscious of the fact that the development trajectory of the country would require labor, of which we are very short. I foresee that we will have Guyanese maybe from the region, especially Trinidad, Barbados, Suriname, and these places coming back. Because when you look at the propensity to save now, even if you're having a less salary, because of the costs, your propensity to save will be higher, and your opportunity of owning your own home will also be higher. As people get older, many of those persons when they were young, many of them are in the mid-30s, not in the mid-30s, or early 40s was old. But most of them who are there now are asking themselves a question. You have young people in their 20s in Guyana owning their own homes. And if you go to some of these young professional schemes, it's just amazing. I'm here 40 years old, I'm still renting. I have to make a decision now. what do I want for my children coming up, and looking at the opportunities that are coming up in the country. So you have a natural pull factor, and then we have to develop the tourism. Not only the hotels, but world-class facilities, nature tourism, ecotourism, and that is why we're working with the big players to come in to do that with us, because that is going to be an important part. So if you look to 2030, you're looking at the new Silica City. You're looking at the infrastructure connectivity among the regions. You're looking at the road from Brazil coming all the way to the Deepwater Port, development of a new regional food hub. You're looking at maybe fuel storage, in which we can become a major mover of fuel, different type of fuel throughout the region. You're looking at the opportunities with gas, how we can move gas, bringing down the cost of cooking gas, being a major supplier of cooking gas regionally. The type of transport and logistics opportunity, all of that will bring up. With that gas, whether it will create an opportunity for us to establish a plant in Latam that can be connected to the grid in northern Brazil, bringing the hydropower from Amazonas Falls onto the grid. All of these things, when you look at that alone, and that trajectory alone and what it will create, it's just an exciting future. It's an exciting future that requires people who believe democracy to handle it. Not who can differentiate that 32 is less than 33.
If I can just put in a quick question regarding the topic of leadership.
By the way, did they ever bring the SOPs? I know that the different segments of the society are continuously calling for the SOPs.
We have not seen them, Mr. President.
Same. To round off my line of questioning regarding leadership, central to your vision has been the One Guyana movement. In the last 4 years, what metrics have you used to measure its success, and what do you see to date as the greatest challenge to it?
You are an example of the measure of success. When I look at the color of your shirt, the One Guyana thing. All over this country, the brand has become so important that people are embracing it culturally, they're embracing it by sports, they're embracing it by religious sentiments. So it has become now psychologically a concept that has brought a level of awareness to every Guyanese. But remember, One Guyana is not only about bridging divide based on our differences. It is about one platform through which every Guyanese can have a prosperous life. That platform is about economic prosperity, financial prosperity, how we get every Guyanese to own their own home, how we get every Guyanese child to have equitable and same access to quality health care, how you have access to quality education, how you have access to quality infrastructure. All of that is embodied in what One Guyana constitutes. It's creating a common platform that delivers a level of service and a level of equity in what the country offers across the board to every Guyanese. That is why that differentiated approach for vulnerable groups is so important. So I'm going to launch sometime next year the full One Guyana manual that traces the historical evolution of our society and our country, and that looks at what the One Guyana concept entails. And you will have a full reading. But when you want to, if you look at it in a very superficial way, you will see how important the brand has become. That every single major event, every single major movement now thinks it necessary that the One Guyana concept must be part of what they want to do. And that alone tells you something. That tells you that this is something that we as a people are embracing. But the greatest measurement is success. success of how people's lives are improving and how the comfort level of our people is enhanced through the investments we're making.
And the greatest challenge thus far?
In the One Guyana movement?
Yes, the greatest test to this movement and seeing its success.
We have been able to convert all the challenges into opportunity.
Okay.
So even those who are sitting outside, we look at them as an opportunity because they will be embodied into it naturally, because there will be no other way for the common way for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with Kiana's question, this brings us to the end of the first segment of In the Seat with the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, President Dr. Irfan Ali. I'm Fariza Hanif. Take care.